What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. This is another episode of our Oscars uh, Best Picture nomination review series. Today we're doing Anatomy of a Fall, which I was not aware is kind of a foreign language movie. I would say probably 60% of it's in French and the other 40% in English. So it's sort of a foreign language film. I just want to say first off before I get started that or I guess this is part of my starting, but this is the first thing I wanted to say is that there are tremendous performances in this movie. I want to give a special shout out to Sandra Huller. I hope I pronounced that right. I probably didn't. It's a German last name. And the child actor, Milo Machado Grainer. Again, probably butchered it. As well as the dog. All three of these characters were just, I mean, they were well written, of course. Hats off to the screenplay, but these three actors in particular killed their roles, and I needed to emphasize that specifically for Milo because a child actor is so hard to come by that actually does such an exquisite job of it. And he's probably 14, 13 when they filmed it, so he was a kid and he did an exceptional job. So the plot of the movie basically revolves around the death of this woman's husband and how they accuse her of being the one to kill him. And she has a son. They have a son together, um, which is where the child actor kind of comes in. And so she has to kind of defend her herself from the law. Now, there's a couple of big key things here that really make this plot intriguing. One, while normally you could argue, oh well, this is just like a typical like trial movie. It might be really well written, but it doesn't. There's nothing special about it. I think a really cool part about this movie is that there's no way for her to defend herself. It feels incredibly difficult. And the biggest part of this is that she doesn't really speak a lot of French. She definitely knows way more French than I do, but she's German. So she knows German, but she also knows English. And so not being able to speak French as well definitely creates a little bit of a language gap between her and the judges. And of course, her lawyer, sort of, not really, and of course the opposing lawyer. So just to feel a little bit of helplessness is in it just goes a long way. And it makes it a little bit different. Also, the fact that this child is a huge part of this court case. Normally the child kind of sits in silence, right? I mean, we talk about a child being in a court case, we think about a divorce case. And in that case, the child is normally um, brought to the stand to testify for both people. And it kind of happens here too. The child gives evidence to back the notion that perhaps it's possible that his mother killed his father, but also evidence to the contrary. Because Milo doesn't know. Um, Milo's also blind, which makes it incredibly difficult because he can't see. He has no idea what fully happened. He can infer. Obviously, he's a very intelligent kid, but he doesn't know fully what happened because he just didn't see it. Um, so I want to say the plot is concise. I think that's the right word. It's short. Well, at least the basic premise is short. It makes sense. It's simple. However, the movie's 2.5 hours long, so you might think, oh, there's a huge pacing issue here. That's where I come in to report that no, there's not. The movie does such a good job of um, intercutting in flashbacks and doing a very good job of telling a complete story that it actually feels like they thought this movie was only going to be about 2 hours and 15, and then while they were writing they realized, oh crap, we have more than that. So those are the best types of long movies because there's actually the material to cover the length. I feel like some movies, I want to come up with an example. I really can't. I think to pull from Marvel for a second, Eternals is a movie that is 2 hours and 45 minutes long, and it doesn't need to be. And I think it is hurt by the fact that it feels like they were trying to pad the runtime. Whereas in this movie, it almost feels like they didn't want to pad the runtime and simply had to, and so it works much better. Again, this movie's not necessarily groundbreaking. We've seen this sort of concept before in other films, but this isn't a concept that needed to be groundbreaking. I think, again, what makes it so interesting is its uniqueness. and the fact that it takes place in a setting where there's a foreign language being used. Obviously, this was a French film, and I want to point that out. Like, I'm the one who's foreign here, but um, she speaks English too. Like, she doesn't fully understand French, not to maybe to a maybe to the point where she speaks it fluently, quote unquote, but not fully. Um, this movie's very intriguing. There's plenty of times where I was kind of on the edge of my seat. I wanted to see what happened, and it keeps you engaged. Um, I started off wanting her to be the killer. I really felt like that was where this movie was going, but I learned later that it really wasn't a murder mystery. This was the trial of a woman. Whether or not she's innocent or not doesn't really matter. It's the end result that matters, because innocent people are guilty all the time, and guilty people become innocent all the time. The law is not completely fair, and it's never going to be 100% accurate. The rival lawyer, the one who's trying to argue for the prosecutors, I suppose, is so evil that it makes it incredibly hard to root for him. So even though from my perspective, I kind of wanted to, I ended up rooting for the protagonist anyway. And of course, this is purposeful. You're not really supposed to side with him, but I wanted to. I really tried to, and it was so difficult to because he seems so antagonistic. Um, there's a sequence too during the many trial scenes where Daniel's first brought to the stand, and both of the lawyers are talking. Um, I don't know if the rival lawyer ever had a name, but I know that Sandra's. It's actually I believe her character's name. Her lawyer was named Vincent, and they're both talking to each other, and Daniel. The camera cuts from where Daniel is, and it goes to Vincent, or it doesn't go to Vincent. It follows Daniel's eyes, so you don't see the lawyers, but you see kind of just Daniel. Daniel's centered in the frame, and you just see his eyes move, and as his eyes move, the camera moves, but the camera's facing him. And it almost felt like he was being talked over, and no one was really listening to him. People were speaking for him, which is also how I feel like many children might feel in this kind of situation, and probably how he felt when his mother and father were consistently fighting. Um, the climax of the movie is really again towards the end, which is the best types of when climaxes are normally towards the end for movies because you don't really if your climax is really like in the middle, there's too much that happens kind of after it to really make the climax feel as important. I like when they're kind of like right at the end, but not fully at the end because it's like a big like it's like a big like exhale with Anatomy of a Fall. The climactic moment for me is when Daniel gives his second testimony. I believe it was a second, and he kind of points out that he believes his father was suicidal through a conversation he has with his father in the car. And the thing here is that, like, I believe that's the evidence they eventually used to acquit his mother of all charges. But honestly, that could have been made up. And I don't know if, like, you're meant to think that way, but I personally, like, the first thing I thought was maybe that's not true. Maybe he made that up if he knew that she killed him. It was copium, to be honest. But that's okay. Final thoughts. This movie was definitely worth the nomination. Um, it meets my 9 out of 10 quota that I had issued later, or earlier. Sorry, I issued it earlier. I was like, if the movie doesn't get a 9 out of 10, it's probably not Best Picture. But here's the thing: American Fiction, I gave an 8.8, and I still think that also deserved it. So I think my math might maybe it's 8.5, which is why Maestro wouldn't have gotten it. Um, my final rating is 9 out of 10, right at that marker. I think it is worth the nomination for sure. I didn't look into all the different cinematography and best actor, best actress, but I know that they should win a couple more awards than just this. But I definitely think that if this wins Best Picture, you'll see me clapping. I enjoyed it thoroughly, and I would be excited to see if it won. Um, that's all I have for you guys. If you enjoyed, please like and subscribe. Comment down below your thoughts on Anatomy of a Fall. And I will see you guys in the next video. Love you all. Peace.